This video is going to be about how to clean scratchy pots and generally do maintenance on a Sequential Circuits Pro-One. So the first thing that you'll have to do, which I've already done, is take this thing apart. It's actually pretty simple to do. There are two wood trimming bits. They look like this, and they sit on either side. There are two screws, 1 and 2, that live on the sides of these things. So that makes 4 screws on the sides, 1, 2. 3, 4. Take that off, the facade will come off with it. And then there's 3 screws on the bottom here, 1, 2, and 3. Those all come out, and the top of the synthesizer, which is resting calmly right here, will then just kind of pull apart. If you tug on it and it doesn't come off easily, be careful. Don't force anything. This is an antique synthesizer. Plastics are getting brittle. If you crack it, chances are you're not going to find a replacement part unless you replace a major section of the synth or buy a part synth. So be careful. And of course, have the thing unplugged beforehand. We'll plug it back in, but I'll tell you where and precautions later. So in taking this thing apart, it's easiest if you also take the keyboard off. There are 4 screws on the bottom. 1, 2 under here, 3, 4 also under here, and there is a connector right here. It's actually a dip socket. Pretty interesting choice by Sequential Circuits. Connected to a ribbon cable that goes right to your keyboard. And let me pull this over here. I've got my phone in my other hand. So here's the keyboard, and there's the ribbon cable. So that comes off. So go ahead and put that aside. Also, be very careful of these contacts on the bottom. There are some standoffs, so if you lay it on a table, you'll be fine. But all these rubber bits are adjustments for the keys. So don't put any pressure on them. I'll go into that later. Also, there is a ribbon cable that connects the pitch and modulation wheel. Sorry, not a ribbon cable, it's a regular cable, but whoa, well, that was convenient. This guy needs to be unplugged, and this is right here. There it is, and the power cable also needs to be unplugged, and that's right here. I've jumped ahead, I've plugged it back in. But unplug it, take it all apart, inspect it, dust it, or whatever. And then have the synthesizer laying on the floor like this. Put something on the metal that is non-conductive, like a book or something that doesn't have a stainless steel cover or some other crap, right? And mind you, there's going to be some parts that stick out. So keep that in mind, but there's no like real, through hole, surface mount, whatever, stuff that sticks out on the other side except for those 2 caps. So lay it out like this, and then with the power unplugged, make sure it's unplugged, plug this connection onto the motherboard. And bear in mind that you are working on electronics. This is open. It will be plugged in. So already we're doing things that you shouldn't be doing. I still feel like this is the best way to tune the synth. Maintain the synth as long as you're not an idiot. So if you feel that you're an idiot, don't do this. And, I'm not recommending that you do this either, but this is how I do it, so I'm sharing my opinion. Regardless, this is plugged in right now, and the mains is turned on. This area, doesn't really need to be said. I'm in the US, it's running 120 volts AC. That will hurt. Don't touch any of these things. And this is stepped down from the transformer, but it's still AC right here on the board, so don't lay your hand on it or anything. Be safe. Anyway, so we are blessed in that the Pro-One has an internal sequencer on it. So even though we have no keyboard plugged in, we can still play notes. So because of that, it'd be good to have an audio out. You can run this through your headphones or some speakers or whatever, but you want to listen to the synth while you're working on it, just so that you know that it's going to work the first time when you put it back together. So I have my headphones here, and if I turn on this switch, which is the repeat switch on the synth, you can have one note played constantly to the LFO, which is right here. I know this synth by heart because I play it as one of my synths, but if you need to know what the controls are, obviously you can look at the panel that's laying aside. So I'm going to turn this on, and the LED blinks to the note, and I'll turn up the volume a little bit, which is right here. You might turn this down before you plug headphones in. And this is as loud as it gets for the headphones, but let me turn the cutoff up a little. I guess not. Wait. There we go. So you can hear that, right? So as you work, listen for scratchy pots. I still recommend that you clean everything, but if you hear a scratchy part and then you clean it and then you hear that it's fine, that's a lot better than spraying all these things, not knowing where the problems are, and then putting it back together and not knowing that you fixed it. So I know this is a problem pot right now. I haven't cleaned this yet. So if I turn this, hear that sound? I'm going to put the phone closer to the headphones. Everybody has heard that sound, right? That's not normal, but it is the sign of aging wipers and aging resistive material on pots. So the way these things work, there is a, let me get this focused, there we go. There's a kind of a band of semiconductive material that kind of goes in a near complete circle here. That band gets connected to this connection and this connection. This connection in the center is your wiper. The wiper is actually connected to the shaft, and there's a little spring kind of tab that sits on that resistive material that goes around the outside. So when you turn it, this wiper is actually sitting and spinning over that connection. If your pot doesn't have any like kind of gooey, you know, that feeling where there's kind of some resistance to it, then you can really feel, like on this synth there's none of that goo. You can really feel the wiper go across that guy there. And of course there's the resistive plastic and whatnot. But anyway, so as these things age, there will be oxidation that will happen on the resistive material and sometimes the wiper. The wiper is usually less of a problem. And sometimes if you have an open fader, like if you have something on a mixer, for example, there will be dust that will gather inside, and that cracking sound that you hear is the wiper actually running across that dust and grit and oxidation and lifting off of the resistive material and back on in minute fractions of a second. That's why it sounds scratchy. If you were to quickly disconnect and reconnect the potentiometer and kind of, you know, mess with it, you can get an idea how drastic this is and why it sounds loud. So anyway, there's some chemicals that you can buy that just go right into these pots so that you can fix them. A very popular one is going to be deoxit. You know, you can find this at a Guitar Center. They sell it. I think Radio Shack sells it. But more specifically, I think this is better for the Pro-One pots. This is Deoxit Fader F5, and it's a little more gentle. It has, you know, more talk about safe on plastic and, you know, stuff. So Anyway, it's a little more gentle, and I recommend it on this. It's still a little overkill. I think you can clean this stuff with rubbing alcohol, but honestly, I've never used rubbing alcohol on pots before. I've always used cleaner, so your mileage may vary. Anyway, I would use as little cleaner as possible. And I would also go as far as to cut something like this out of some paper towels so that you're not spraying it everywhere. This is cleaner. It's designed to soak in and like get rid of oxidation, so it is kind of caustic, I'd imagine, and you don't want this stuff getting soaked into your board. You know, who knows what several years of the cleaner soaked in your board is going to do to it. Chances are nothing, but you don't need to take that risk by just being reckless. So anyway, I know that this pot is kind of bad. It's got some oxidation. We can hear it. And Pro-One conveniently has given us a little hole on these pots. So if we're careful, we can take the straw and put it in this thing and give it just a quick little spray and not even have to take the thing apart or work it in or anything. So here's what you do. Take this, put it over the pot. I'm going to do this one-handed, so pardon if it's sloppy. Shake this up a little bit. There's an adjustment on the top. Even the lowest adjustment is still way too strong, so turn it to the lowest. And then when you have this thing held, find that little hole and give it just a quick spray, real quick. That's more than enough. So now we've sprayed it. You can see it's gone everywhere. And then you tune it back and forth while it's fresh. So you heard the cracking. You're hearing it go away. Moving the wiper back and forth with that cleaner on there is essentially scraping the oxidation off. Okay, so if you haven't figured out already, this is a level for that oscillator, and I'm going to put the phone close to the headphone, and I'm going to play exactly what you heard a second ago, moving the same pot, and you can hear the difference. So, geez, there's no good way to hold this. Anyway, I think that's good, so here we go. Perfect. It's silent. Alright, so this one's taken care of. What I also recommend is to take a cloth. Microfiber cloth is good because it soaks up a lot of crap. And then just go over it and kind of clean up the excess. This is optional, but I don't like the idea of cleaner having to live in places that it doesn't need to be for extended periods of time. As you can kind of tell, I like to be very particular about these things, try to keep them in good condition. This spray also works great on switches, on these switches, the 4-position rotary pots. So also use them there. These guys you just kind of want to spray into the corner of the shaft. Again, real quick, just psh, and that's all you should need. It's more than enough. And then even if some of these pots seem to be okay, still clean them. This is open, this is your opportunity. After a while they will age and they will have that problem, so it's preventative maintenance to just go through and get this cleaned up. There's other maintenance items that you can do as well. Check the service manual. When this thing is put back together, you don't need to take this apart. These little trim pots, they're for adjusting the range on the oscillators. You might want to go through and do that. I won't go into detail about that. And on the keyboard, if you wanted to, if you find that the keys are kind of intermittent when you hit them, this is why. There's these little wires that tap a common connection, and that's how keys strike. It's really cool. So, as you would imagine, for the same reason oxidation can be a problem with potentiometers, it can be here. So, you know, if it's like, you know, especially if it's on and then when you let go, it hits another note, you can be very careful and clean these off with Q-tips, but don't bend them. They are kind of everywhere. This is how it's supposed to look. You know, if you could straighten it if you really wanted to, but I wouldn't. And if you wanted to as well, these bits right here are just rubber, and they sit on the key. So you can adjust where on the key the note is supposed to turn on. So if you pull these rubber guys out, then they will make the note strike earlier as you press the key. And if you push them in, then they'll strike later as you press the key. There's no perfect place to put this, it's just preference. So if you want to get really into that, you can. Also, on the other side of here, this is some maintenance I want to do. You can grease up these keys. Yeah. Read up on what to use. I wish I could recommend something right now. But I was going to do some research and figure out the right kind of grease to use. Because at one point I had a synthesizer, it was an ESQ1. I didn't know what I was doing. I put some oil on the rubber contacts thinking it would make it glide easier, but what happened was the rubber expanded and all the keys became super stiff and they would stick, and it was really bad. I had to get another keyboard and salvage it, and I felt horrible because I really like to keep these things in good shape. So anyway, this is where those little rubber bushings are. I've also found that sometimes the keys can get kind of sticky, like they want to stay until you press them and then they kind of click and then they finally play. Your choice of grease might minimize that. Yeah, but aside from doing those things, there's not too much more that you really need to do to keep this thing running in shape. I mean, it's an analog synth. The only thing you need to worry about is the moving parts, which would be the pots and the switches and stuff. And once you get that taken care of, it's just making it look pretty and keeping all the dust out. Yeah, so that's what it takes. When you're done, of course, unplug, turn off the mains, unplug it from the wall before you unplug this thing, then put it back together the same way you took it apart. And my advice to you with almost everything, don't over tighten screws. There's no reason why the screws need to be more than just snug. It will keep you from accidentally stripping these things. It will keep the screw heads looking better, and it will make it a lot easier to take this apart next time, because chances are if you own one of these things, if you're not willing to pay out a lot of money for a Music Star, you'll probably open it up a few times while you own it over the years. So yeah, there you go. That's how to tune a Pro-One. If you haven't noticed already, there's some Easter eggs all over this PCB. So I'll give you some bonus material for sticking with me. Alright. Cool. Hey, thanks guys.